tell us about the beginnings, where it all began, where the Rex Harrison story started, in fact, in Liverpool?
Well, I started as a very young man in Liverpool Rep, and played some very small parts. The first part I played was in 30 Minutes in the Street, and I had one line to say, which was fetch a doctor, baby, which I said, fetch a baby doctor. And that was my first go. And then I had another go. I was blacked up. I was playing a part called Jimmy Kanaka in Eugene O'Neill's play called Gold. And I'd blacked up there, put a lot of bowl all over myself, and hadn't been told that the tree that I had to climb had been fireproof just before the curtain went up and was wet. So I went up black and came down white.
And naked.
And, yes, with a sort of shark skin, shark's teeth. And then at the end of that fairly unsuccessful session at Liverpool Rep, the late William Armstrong begged me with tears in his eyes to give it up. And I was tempted to, I must say, at that time, but I staggered on, came to London, and then got a job in Charlie's Aunt.
You never, even at that time, had doubts about yourself, did you?
I think one always has doubts about oneself, actually, David. You know, yes, I wasn't ever sure that I was going to have any great success.
When did you think that you could lick this acting business?
I think it's really slow. I think, first of all, you have to learn it, which is a very delicate and long process of learning to act without appearing to act, which I like to do. And I think it comes very slowly, and I think you keep learning, and you never stop learning.
You take some time before deciding to do a part, which can drive producers and directors mad.
Yes, it can. I think that actually the reason that I take such a long time generally to choose what I'm going to do is because I think it's one of the most important parts of a career is not to choose wrong all the time. I mean, even if you're a good actor, you can make a series of mistakes, and you're never seen again. I think it's terribly important. The choice of material is vitally important, and I think that's why probably one deliberates. And I'm sure all actors deliberate, leading actors deliberate before doing anything. They have to, I think.
Are there any questions that anyone would like to ask?
Mr. Harrison, when you're choosing parts, have you made any mistakes in your own reckoning?
Oh, good God, yes. Dozens.
What were the worst?
It'd be awfully rude to name them because of the people involved. I suppose one of my greatest errors was choosing a play of Anouilh's to do in New York after I'd come out of Fair Lady. I'd done it in Drury Lane for a year, and then I chose a play which was finally called A Fighting Cock, which was a play of Anouilh's, very obscure play about de Gaulle, and I fell in love with it and wanted to do it. They didn't understand it at all in America. I put on a nose, I put on the eyebrows, I put on the boots. I had to take them all off in Philadelphia. They couldn't. They don't like me with a nose for some reason. And it was just hopeless. That was a hideous error on my part. Lots of others, but I won't go into them in detail.
I would be very interested, Mr. Harrison, if you could tell us something about your early years of filmmaking. I see from the program notes that you made 2 films in 1930, and then there was a 6-year gap, after which it appears you never looked back. Could you tell us what happened then?
It happened.
I haven't got my list.
I got my list here.
Got your list. Oh, wait, I have got a list. Gets better.
Well, I don't think I...
The Great Game 1930, School for Scandal 30, All at Sea 34, there's a 4-year gap, and then Men Are Not Gods in 1936, so there's a 4-year gap between 1930 and 1934.
Well, I mean, you'd have to have blinked, or not have blinked to have seen me, because, I mean, I was playing the tiniest parts in those films. I think in the last one you read out was Corda.
That's right.
And I played a tiny part.
Yes. All at Sea. Or
Yeah,
Men Are Not Gods.
Men Are Not Gods. Men Are Not Gods.
Yes.
Men Are Not Gods was Miriam Hopkins, who was then a great star. and I played a tiny part in that. And then the next thing was with Vivian Lee in Storm in the Teacup, which was what, 30?
That was 30. Storm in the Teacup was 37.
Yes. Well, I mean, it wasn't really a sort of gap in my career. Actually, it hadn't started.
Which directors have you enjoyed working with most, and why?
Well, I think Preston Sturges. You know Preston Sturges' work, I expect. I made the next to the last film he ever made, called Unfaithfully Yours. He was a marvelously exciting man to work with. He was very eccentric. He used to direct in a fez, so that everybody knew where he was. And he couldn't be mistaken for anybody else but Preston Sturges. And he used to have a Doberman Pinscher on the set with him, always. He used to bark at the most important moments. And he would then also, he was like a circus. I mean, he'd have anybody who was passing the soundstage, he would beckon them in, and he would love to sort of have it sort of an entertainment apart from the actual film itself. A very amusing man. He had a marvelous sort of background because he was an American. He was born in Chicago. Mr. Sturges was a meat packer. And Mrs. Sturges didn't like Mr. Sturges very much, I don't think, because she grabbed the baby when he was very young and ran off with little Preston to Europe, where she bumped into Isadora Duncan and became a great friend of Isadora Duncan's and traveled with Isadora Duncan and had lovers in almost every capital in the Near East and Europe and everything. And Preston went along for the ride and learnt a lot of languages and enjoyed himself thoroughly. By the time he was a very cosmopolitan man. He arrived here, I think, and I think his mother ran a perfume shop in Bond Street for a while. And then he came to New York, wrote a successful play in New York, and then he started churning out those marvelous comedies. He wrote his own films, as you know, and he directed them and produced them. And he used to be so amused with his own dialogue that he used to have to sit behind the camera with a handkerchief in his mouth. He saw himself laughing.
Do you prefer to act in, films or theatre?
It's a very difficult one to answer, I think, that one. I think on the whole that the theatre is the more satisfactory one for the actor. I think that although actors can get great satisfaction out of screen acting, they have very little or no control of the final product. And really it is a director's medium, and I think to be a film director is probably more exciting than to be a film actor. And on the other hand, a theatre actor, you are totally in control of your own destiny with an audience, and you are helped by a director, but you really are out on your own. And this gives you a sense of satisfaction, I think, and also a sense of achievement, which you don't get when you make a film, because you make a film and maybe you do see it in its rough state, or maybe you see it later once, but you don't know the reaction that you're having on an audience night after night, because you're not there. I think the theatre is by far more satisfactory.
Harrison, later this afternoon, we are going to see Major Barbara, in which, of course, you played Adelphus' cousins.
Yes.
I take it that Bernard Shaw kept very strict tabs on that, as he was alive at the time.
Yes, he did.
I was wondering what he would have made of My Fair Lady.
Well, I must say, I wonder that every night I played it. I used to think what he would have said. But I did see quite a lot of him during the making of Major Barbara, which was a great privilege and marvellously interesting. He did. He kept tabs on Pascal. And there was not a word spoken, of course, which he hadn't written, or wasn't in the original play, or he wrote additional dialogue, naturally. And he kept a close watch on the sets and the performances. And one day he came down to the studio because he did a foreword to the American Major Barbara version, where he made a speech, a very witty and funny speech to the Americans about, it was the time that they were, I think it was Lease Len, they were giving us some of their old battleships, I think, and he said he was giving them some of his old plays in a very funny speech. And then after this was over, this little address that he gave to the camera, where Wendy Hiller was playing, remember, we were playing Major Barbara, and Pascal asked Shaw whether he would try and explain a scene to us, because the last scene in Major Barbara is very high flown, and between Cousins and Major Barbara, the very last love scene. So we both sat down on each side of Shaw, and he started to read this scene over. And he didn't say a word. He went on and on. It was funny. He went on over. It was a long scene. He went on and on and on, didn't say anything. And then all he said was, "Oh, what a terrible scene." He didn't say anything else. He didn't give us any advice. Nothing. He just closed the book. He probably hadn't read it since 1908.
You understand, don't you, that I had to decide without consulting you? If I'd left this choice to you, you'd sooner or later have despised me for it. Your father's challenge has beaten me. Dare I make war on war? I dare. I must. I will. And now, is it all over between us?
Silly baby, Dolly. How could it be?
Then you owe for my drum.
Take care, Dolly. Take care. Oh, if only I could get away from you, from Father, and from it all.
And leave me?
Yes, but I can't. I was happy for a moment in the Salvation Army, but as soon as our money ran short, it all came back to Bodger. Undershaft and Bodger. Their hands stretch everywhere, and as long as that lasts, there's no getting away from them. Turning our backs on them is turning our backs on life. Do you know what would have happened if you'd refused Papa's offer?
I wonder.
I should have given you up and married the man who'd accepted it. After all, my dear old mother's got more sense than any of you. I felt like her when I saw this place. Felt that I must have it. That never, never, never could I let it go. Only she thought it was all the houses and the kitchen ranges and the linen and the china. But it was really all the human souls to be saved. Not weak souls in starved bodies, sobbing with gratitude for a scrap of bread and scrape. But souls that are hungry because their bodies are full. My father shall never throw it in my teeth again that my converts were bribed with bread. Major Barbara will die with the colors. Glory, hallelujah. Mama! Mama!
Well, what does she say? She's gone right up into the skies.
Mama! Well, Barbara, what do you want? A house in the village to live in with Dolly.
The fact that you played the stage version of My Fair Lady first helped you when you had to make the film version of it.
Yes, it did. I mean, the very fact that one was very familiar with the material is always a help. If you make a film, you're never that familiar with the material at hand, which I was obviously with. The only danger I felt myself was that I would give it's called a stagey film performance, which would, in other words, it would be too projected. In films, you shouldn't project to the extent, obviously, that you have to in the theatre. And I thought I might have got into an ugly trap of getting used to projecting. But there was about a year in between the time I made the film and the last performance I gave at Drury Lane, and I found it quite easier to adapt it to the screen.
Look at her, a prisoner of the gutters, condemned by every syllable she utters. By right, she should be taken out and hung for the cold-blooded murder of the English tongue. Wow. Heavens, what a sound. This is what the British population calls an elementary education.
Oh, come, sir, I think you picked a poor example.
Did I? Hear them down in Soho Square, dropping H's everywhere, speaking English any way they like. You, sir, did you go to school?
What are you quoting me for?
Well, no one taught him take instead of tyke. Hear a Yorkshireman, or worse, hear a Cornishman converse. I'd rather hear a choir singing flat. Chickens cackling in a barn, just like this one. God. I ask you, sir, what sort of word is that? It's one gone that keep her in her place, not her wretched clothes and dirty face. Why can't the English teach their children how to speak? This verbal class distinction by now should be antique. If you spoke as she does, sir, instead of the way you do, why, you might be selling flowers too.
I beg your pardon, sir.
An Englishman's way of speaking absolutely classifies him. The moment he talks, he makes some other Englishman despise him. One common language, I'm afraid, we'll never get. Oh, why can't the English learn to set a good example to people whose English is painful to your ears? The Scotch and the Irish leave you close to tears. There even are places where English completely disappears. Well, in America, they haven't used it for years. Why can't the English teach their children how to speak? Norwegians learn Norwegian, the Greeks are taught their Greek. In France, every Frenchman knows his language from A to Z. The French don't care what they do, actually, as long as they pronounce it properly. Arabians learn Arabian with the speed of summer lightning, and the Hebrews learn it backwards, which is absolutely frightening. But use proper English, you're regarded as a freak. Oh, why can't the English learn to speak?
Was there no problem in playing it so long on the stage? Doesn't there come a time after the second year when the sort of mental block?
Oh, absolutely. And no, I don't think anybody realizes the agonies that actors go through if they play a thing for a long time, because it becomes meaningless after a while. If you've done it 8 times a week for a year, 2 years, your mind is apt to wander a little bit. And if it wanders for a second, and you think, well, I wonder what I'm going to have for supper or something in the middle of it all, you don't know where you are for a minute, and then you catch it again. But it gives you such a mental shock that for a week you're terrified it's going to happen again. It's not fun. At the end of Drury Lane, this was my 3rd year, mark you, I used to have the lyrics on the side of the stage with me before I went on. Because I knew them too well, you know. I mean, they were so, they made no sense anymore. No, it's not, the long run, they're very hard on actors.
I've always noticed that unlike some actors, you have tended to play Professor Higgins as a rather callous man. Did you deliberately decide to make him not too charming?
Some actors have made the mistake of being overly charming to Eliza too early, which simply doesn't make the thing work. In fact, when I saw it in Rome, there was an Italian actor playing my part who was unbelievably charming to her all through the show. and even leapt to his feet at the end of the song and took her in his arms and hugged her, and I had supper with him after. And I said, why'd you do that? Because it's ruining the whole thing. He said, well, honestly, the audience would hate me so much if I didn't do it. I simply felt I had to do it.
Question of the back row there.
Julie Andrews didn't get the part of My Fair Lady at all.
Yes, yes, I was sorry too. It was again in the days of the major studios, and they didn't really feel that she was box office in those days because she hadn't made all those films that she made afterwards. You know, that's really what it boiled down to.
What was Cupid's view on that? He was terribly good with women as a director.
He wanted Audrey, I'm sure.
He did.
Yes.
I've grown accustomed to her face. She almost makes the day begin. I've grown accustomed to the tune that she whistles night and noon. Her smiles, her frowns, her ups, her downs are second nature to me now. Like breathing out and breathing in. I was serenely independent and content before we met. Surely I could always be that way again. And yet, I've grown accustomed to her looks, accustomed to her voice, accustomed to her face. Marry Freddie. What an infantile idea. What a heartless, wicked, brainless thing to do. But she'll regret it. She'll regret it. It's doomed before they even take the vow. I can see her now, Mrs. Freddie Eynsford Hill, in a wretched little flat above a store. I can see her now, not a penny in the till and a bill collector beating at the door. She'll try to teach the things I taught her and end up selling flowers instead, begging for her bread and water, while her husband has his breakfast in bed. In a year or so, when she's prematurely grey and the blossom in her cheek has turned to chalk, she'll come home and lo, he'll have upped and run away with a social climbing heiress from New York. Poor Eliza. How simply frightening. How humiliating. How delightful. How poignant it'll be on that inevitable night when she hammers on my door in tears and rags. Miserable and lonely, repentant and contrite. Will I take her in or hurl her to the wolves? Give her kindness or the treatment she deserves? Will I take her back or throw the baggage out? Well, I'm a most forgiving man. The sort who never could, ever would, take a position and staunchly never budge. It's a most forgiving man. But I shall never take her back. If she were crawling on her knees, let her promise to atone, let her shiver, let her moan. I'll slam the door and let the hellcat freeze. Marry Freddie. Ha! But I'm so used to hear her say good morning every day. Her joys, her woes, her highs, her lows are second nature to me now. Like breathing out and breathing in. I'm very grateful she's a woman and so easy to forget. Rather like a habit one can always break. And yet I've grown accustomed to the trace of something in the air, accustomed to her face.
When you did My Fair Lady, there were some people who thought that it should have been Julie Andrews since she had starred on Broadway. Did you feel funny about that?
I totally agree. It should have been Julie Andrews. In fact, I told my agent that I didn't want to do it because I thought it should be her. And for some crazy reason, and Hollywood has often been crazy, Perhaps because she then didn't have a big enough name, I don't know. They decided to give it to yet another person. So it was only until it was between me and a third person that I accepted. So I felt very badly about that. It was very unjust. And Julie knows it. Because the part was rightfully hers. But, you know, that never quite went away. But I felt I was entitled to do it as much as the third girl. So then I did accept.
It was, of course, in theory, the first time that you sang. I now have what I think may be a surprise for you, and probably for everybody else here. Could we have the surprise, please?
I'm looking for Mr. Gus Bennett. I was told I'd find him here.
Oh, he's along here, all right. Can hear a warbling note like an air raid siren? Well, that's him singing.
Over there?
Turns out the same mouldy songs from 9 in the morning. The human barrel organ he is.
Lots in life may be denied, but hearts can laugh when love's inside, for only love can lead the way as time rolls on and on.
I perjured myself for years, saying I'd never sung before. Fair Lady, and we suddenly discovered this thing. I'd forgotten all about it. I did it in Night Train.
Night Train debuting had another importance, however, because I think it brought you to Hollywood, did it not? In fact, finally, after a long time.
Yes, it was a film that I made in 39-40, that sort of thing, before I went to the Air Force, and with Carol Reed. And then we didn't know. The Americans hadn't come into the war. We didn't know what had happened to it. But in fact, Night Train to Munich went to New York and ran about 39 weeks and was a very great success in the United States. And as soon as the war was over, it was released by 20th Century Fox, and as soon as the war was over, they came over and asked me if I'd go there under contract to Fox, which I did in 45. And this was the film that really started my career in Hollywood film.
Didn't you work again with Carol Reed recently on The Agony and the Ecstasy?
Oh, yes. Well, I mean, Carol I've known all my life very well indeed, and over that huge span between, actually, Agony and the Ecstasy and Night Train to Munich, we saw each other a lot socially, and we always would meet and have a meal wherever we were, if we happened to be in the same part of the world. Yes, I mean, second to Sturgis, or as much as Sturgis, perhaps, even. I enjoy working with Carol, yes.
Can you tell us something about the character of Pope Julius, whom you played in The Agony and the Ecstasy?
He was a very, that particular Pope Julius is not very well known to the general public, I don't think, but he was a very remarkable man. He wasn't really a cleric in the true sense of the word. He was born a Duke de Rivera, who lived in the north of Italy, bought himself a cardinalship, and became Pope, and he became a warrior Pope. In fact, he went into all the sieges and would give the holy blessing covered in blood, and he was a very remarkable and interesting character at the same time as the artist lived. And I enjoyed playing it very much, and I enjoyed acting with Heston. Heston, I reckon, was a little taller than I was, so I decided to put on some lifts. I thought I was wearing a long robe, so I'd be all right. And he got taller and taller. I thought, this can't be right. I was looking at this man, eye level. I suddenly was up there. And I thought, well, I better put some more lifts on. We went on and on and on, getting taller and taller. I think he did, actually. But anyway, I enjoyed working with him very, very much.
Which sort of role you yourself prefer, the light comedy role, which undoubtedly is your forte, or more dramatic role as with the Pope?
I'd always like, if I can, to infuse a certain amount of comedy into everything I do. But in the later years, I've enjoyed more the serious roles than the lighter roles. I think it's partly because one grows older, one gets more mature. I think really of all the parts that I've played, I've enjoyed Caesar the most, and goodness knows that wasn't really anything to do with comedy.
How much research do you put into a part before you take it?
Well, it depends, of course, entirely on the part.
Take some of the parts
I
that you've
read,
seen
I mean,
today.
for instance, take Caesar. I took a lot of trouble in reading every available piece on the man and the character and his extraordinary qualities, and the fact that he was an epileptic as well, which must have coloured a great deal of his attitudes towards public appearances and so on. His great dread was, of course, of falling down in front of the crowd. And those kind of things I did work hard at and was very interested by, and Pope Julius I worked hard at and finding out about the man. Under normal conditions, if you have a purely fictional character, you don't have to go into it deeply. You just take the written page, the written word, and study it and see how you're going to adapt yourself to that particular man.
What is the part that's given you most satisfaction?
Well, I think Caesar has. I think Caesar gave me more satisfaction playing Caesar than playing Higgins. But I think that it was totally different anyway, but gave me personally more satisfaction.
The film has some fairly remarkable beginnings. Indeed, it began once with a different director and then stopped and started all over again.
It did. Yes, it did. It started off here, didn't it? And with Elizabeth Taylor and two other actors. Boyd and
Peter Finch.
Peter Finch. Stephen Boyd. And then it folded up, and then it finally came to Burton and myself. Well, of course, the stories about Cleopatra are absolutely endless. But one of the funniest ones, I think, because when I was standing with Richard, and it was before a scene that you're going to see on the screen in a few minutes. And Richard said, "These boots are damned uncomfortable." He said, I can hardly walk in them. And I said, "Well, why is that?" I mean, my shoes are very comfortable. I had them made at this local Rome bootmaker. He said, "No, these are Stephen Boyd's boots." Why the hell didn't you ask for other boots? No, I didn't want to bother. They looked all right. I think that it's not going to be such a bad film in years to come as people thought of it when it was originally shown. I think there's some marvelous things in it. It shouldn't have taken 2 years, of course. I mean, it could have taken a year very easily, though. I think it had gone flat out.
Is there any particular scene that comes to being your personal favourite?
Well, I think the scene that you're going to see in a minute is my favourite. It's the scene where he invites, in fact he did, he asked all the Senate to come to, not to his own villa, but to Cleopatra's villa. And that was where he made his cardinal error of demanding that he should be made Emperor of Rome in his mistress's house. And this is the night before the great storm and the Ides of March and his assassination in the Senate.
Is Caesar to come before the Senate each day like a schoolboy with his lessons, now passing, now failing?
Do you suggest that the Senate no longer deliberate the welfare of Rome? Do you suggest an end to the process of Roman law?
I must be the law, and my word must be the welfare of Rome. Else, take from me this meaningless title of dictator. I've carried a sword for too long. Cannot now pretend with an empty scabbard.
Surely Caesar must recall the symbolic nature of the title dictator at the time it was conferred upon him. It was to honor Caesar above all men, and to indicate the gratitude of Rome for Caesar's triumphs in its name.
Brutus, I recall them well, those triumphs. Do you? Pharsalia, for one, when you trembled in Antony's hand when Antony was hot to separate you from your head, with just cause. It was by my command that your life was spared. There was no deliberating body. It was not by my wish, but by my command, by my dictate, if you will, that you stand here tonight, dribbling virtue out of the corners of your mouth. Sit down. No, I want no more meaningless privileges and considerations. No more honors designed to pacify me. I'd rather have nothing. Remain what I am at heart, a humble man, anxious only to serve. Why are the eyes of a statue always without life? Have any of you here seen the Nile? Spare yourselves the journey. She carries it within her eyes.
I suggest, Caesar, that the hour is late.
Very late for Rome. I was speaking, Cassius. Where was I?
Anxious to serve.
Yes, I've served. Served for all of my life. I've won for Rome more than half of the world. Most of you here owe your honors and your fortunes to me. Now, I want you to do as I say. You will appoint me Emperor of Rome.
In the 30s, you said once that at that time in your life you had no politics, no religion, no philosophy, but you were scared of death. Would you go along with that now?
Where'd you get that from, David? I knew he'd been looking in my file. God damn it.
You actually said it to me.
Well, obviously there's been a big change taking place.
Yes.
Because I'm not at all afraid of death now, David. I don't know why. And what are the other ones?
You said you had no politics, no religion, and no philosophy.
Good God. Well, I'm not very strong on religion, although I'm getting slowly a little bit more convinced that something goes on somewhere. not frightened of death anymore. A philosophy I have grown to have, which is to, I must say, live for the day and wake up in the morning and start to think how marvelous the day is going to be. And it always is. Or nearly always is.
There's a line from Major Barbara which sums that up, isn't there?
Oh, yes. Shaw's translation of Euripides. Oh, I know it. Whoe'er can know, as the long days go, that to live is happy, has found his heaven. Yes, that's the one. Yes, I think that's true. So I've got a sort of philosophy now. What?
Politics?
What else? Politics. Yeah, well, I think, I've always been fairly firm there. I think that if I had been living in a different period, I would have been a liberal. But, and I think I probably still am a liberal, in fact. Yeah, and I would sum myself up as a liberal, I think.
What do you believe was the comparative failure of Dr. Dolittle?
I'm not acknowledging that. I'm not having a word of that. No, I think it's going to be what they call a perennial. Yeah. I think it's going to come up every now and then. If one wants to criticize it, I can criticize it in many areas, but I think it's not my business to do so. I found it quite a pleasant film, personally. I thought it was quite amusing and went along quite well. And it was, again, one of the not easy ones to make, because to work in such close proximity with all those animals for a year wasn't the most pleasant experience of my life. Yeah.
Or St. Lucia with the stuff.
Or St. Lucia, either. Yeah, that's quite right. But then the thought, if you can imagine, a very small set, I mean, half the size of where we are, which was Dr. Dolittle's sitting room, with all manner of animals tethered. And huge animals, too. I mean, enormous cows and goats and God knows what. They would all be doing their business quite naturally. So we would then have to clear the set, sweep it up, air it, come back again, start again. Oh, God.
Shortly going to see you on BBC television in Chekhov's play Platonov. What made you decide to go into television?
Well, it wasn't so much as going into television as much as I'd done the play for 6 weeks only at the Royal Court. And I loved the play, and I thought it was a very interesting play for anybody who's seen Chekhov's later plays. It's like a sort of early sketch for all his plays, but much lighter and with much more wit and much more fun, and but had all the echoes of his later plays. And we did it for his centenary at the Royal Court. Late George Devine asked me to do it. And I thought, well, it's a pity in a way that more people haven't seen it, because a number of people who can see it in 6 weeks at the court are very, very small. So I thought it'd be a good idea, since I was very, very fond of the piece indeed, that I should do it. It was obviously never going to be made into a film, and as the television medium, it seemed a good way, if we could do it well, of quite a number of people enjoying it, and maybe even leaning towards seeing other Chekhov plays, which they might feel was going to be boring. That's really why I did it. It's a very difficult medium, I think, for actors, because we rehearsed for 5 weeks, and we actually shoot it. Well, we have 4 days in the studio only, but we block it for cameras 1 day. You shoot an hour. There's a hell of a lot. The second day. The third day you rehearse for cameras, and the fourth day you shoot another hour. It's a 2-hour show done in practically 2 days, which is not exactly what I'm used to. I'm used to doing 3 minutes. So it was quite a trial. And I haven't seen the results, alas. I could have reported to you about it if I had seen it, but I haven't seen it yet. But I will be seeing it, I think, within the next few days, and I hope it's going to work.
Somebody had a question there, yes, gentleman at the back.
Yes.
I've often felt that I'd like to see you on the West End stage in one of the great English comedies, such as one of Oscar Wilde's plays or a restoration comedy. I was wondering if you have any plans or ideas for anything of that kind in the future.
Yes, I would very much like to get back into the theatre again in London. And in fact, I've got all sorts of ideas and plans that are cooking in my mind. If only one could find something in the restoration field that hadn't been done for a long time, or in any comedy field for that matter. I mean, I keep digging all the time, but it's very difficult to find one.
Question from the audience now.
No, it's not a question, it's just a statement. May I say to Mr. Harrison what an enormous amount of pleasure you've given us in your career.
Thank you so much.